Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh from MitsuTimes. Today, our guest is Mark Leisure. He is the driver of the 8-second 1G. Let's see, what are you right now, Mark? Number...
On the 1G list, I think I'm 8 or 9. I just got bumped.
I think Rich Ong just bumped you,
Yep.
but still inside the top 10.
Correct.
Which is quite a feat, considering that the 1G list is very, very quick. So, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about your setup on your car?
Yeah. So the setup on the car, the way it currently sits right now, it's a 2-liter long rod motor, filled block. It's an OEM block still, so not running a billet or anything. It's that motor was built by MA Performance. I use a R&R solid rod with a Wiseco piston, and it's got a map. Did the porting on the cylinder head, like their stage 5 head. And it's got a set of for camshafts. I run S3 cams from GSC, just kind of shelf stock stuff, and Kigley springs, the race only springs, and so that's kind of the engine breakdown. And for induction, I've got a forward facing PTE 7685 Gen 2 Sportsman turbo, and I've got from a drivetrain perspective, dog box transmission, PPG gear set. I use a Quartermaster triple plate disc, and the whole I've got I think it's the Boostin, bearing plate on it, and a Quay front diff, limited slip in it, so kind of built up to all the things you can do to them, really. And from a transfer case perspective, I use the fully built, Magnus gears and tail shaft with the Boostin midsection and Magnus billet front section. I've got a 2-piece carbon fiber drive shaft in the car, and it takes it out to a 3000 GT rear diff with a aftermarket limited slip diff in it. I'm not sure exactly what the make is. I actually kind of got super lucky, and I was getting some backup parts and found one in a junkyard and had shipped to my house, and opened it up, and surprised I found an aftermarket diff, so it was pretty cool. Big bonus. And I've had problems with 3000 GT rear ends with like stripping splines on the carrier for the factory differential. So that's been an awesome addition to stop that kind of failure. I run DSS axles all the way around. So I've got a Pro rear axle, and I guess they call it the Pro rear. And then the 1000 horse axles up front. Yeah, and that seems to be pretty bulletproof. However, last year I did break an axle for the first time on the front. Actually, a cup and the stub, in the transmission, broke the bell housing, and it was a mess. But yeah, so that's been pretty good. I run a Haltech engine management system, and just kind of it's pretty well optioned out. It's an Elite 2500. Yeah, and that's been like, one of those game changers for me and the car over the years. Just, with it, all of its features that are kind of targeted at drag racing. And that's been a big benefit for me, just torque management off the line, and just, things like that. From a fuel perspective, I just switched over to methanol M1. Dynoed the car last Friday, so that was pretty exciting, just to make that fuel switch. I do all my own calibration work. I work with Haltech. They're a great group of guys, give me some pointers, and they've had awesome support for that change. And from a fuel perspective, I run 3 injectors per cylinder and a mechanical fuel pump. So I've got a Magnus manifold with 2 secondary injectors, and then primary. They're all FIC injectors, and I run the 1650 high Z with the stainless insides. So yeah, and it's from a safety perspective, it's I forget the dot number, but it's a 25 chassis sorted down to 750, and I ended up bending tubes and putting that all in, fabricating everything on it.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's part of the hobby I really like, or the sport and hobby is, being hands-on and making all the, doing everything possible that I can, and as well as calibrating and driving the car.
Well, you're close to pushing that chassis cert. I know. I think it was September last year. You got that 8142 at 171.
Yep, that was a pretty cool pass. I just started using a strain gauge on the dog box,
Yeah.
and it was amazing. Just doing just doing a strain gauge shift like 1-2, first gear to second gear, and I think the first time I did it, I picked up like 0.4 of a second ET. It was just crazy, and it's due to the like turbo response time and transient response. So you hit second gear with power immediately. So that was pretty amazing, from a change perspective.
So, Mark, what is it that made you choose the 1G platform in the first place?
Well, I'm an ancient DSMer, and going back to when I was pretty young. It was the mid '90s, and I worked at a custom car stereo shop when I was in high school, and it was tied, or at one point that custom car stereo shop coupled with like a sport compact shop that was next door, and Brent Rao actually worked at that shop for a period of time, and I saw his Eclipse, and I worked with him a little bit. I was doing car audio, he was doing more of the sport compact stuff, and it was a short period of time, but I kind of was wanting to get into something, in the faster car, sports car kind of thing. I was looking at, Camaros and Mustangs, and as well as the sport compact stuff, and it just seemed like that era and that time, and for who I was, the Talon made sense. And I didn't know very much about it. I bought it in 1997, and I got lucky. It was a 6-bolt, 4-bolt rear end car, and I think it had like maybe 20,000 miles on it, or 15,000 miles on it when I bought it, and it was my first DSM, and I've owned a lot of DSMs over the years as drivers, but so it just kind of evolved into a full-blown race car over the last 25 years or whatever it is.
So Brent Rao himself was the inspiration. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's a little interesting nugget of information, huh?
That's awesome. I wish he was still in it. I mean, or at least I know he sold his car to someone in Australia. I wish we could still see that thing in action.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was definitely a trailblazer.
For sure, yeah.
And a number of people out there.
So tell us about your car when you bought it. Was it pretty close to stock?
Yeah, it was 100% stock.
Oh, nice.
Car was from Texas, and the first I bought it to mod it, right? So like the first thing, it was, putting an exhaust on it, and intake and boost controller, and I think right away did a head gasket swap on it, so to a MLS, like a HKS MLS, and a boost controller. And shortly thereafter, I got a super AFC and some other stuff. And, the car was probably running, performance-wise back then, it was, low 13s, high 12s with that setup. So it didn't really take very much to have a decent performing car.
That's awesome.
And it kind of lived like that for a little while, and just slowly kept adding stuff to it. Yeah.
So what different setups have you had in it over the years?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's had so many different setups,
Yeah.
right? Part of my learning and networking with the community, seeing what other people were doing. I was never like a trendsetter, so I was always looking for information and data. I'm an engineer by trade, and so I appreciated the Trailblazers, right? So I started out with like bolt-on turbos and things that would bolt to the factory manifold, and so I think I did like a 50 trim turbo on it, or it started out with like a 16G, then I went to a 20G, then I went to I think like a 50 trim, and had good kind of success with each jump, um, and I think when I went to a tubular manifold. It was like I was like a budget builder, and so probably not some of the best quality stuff by any means. I went to like a 67 millimeter GT40 turbo, a ball bearing setup, and that was like immediately that car jumped like a second and a quarter mile.
Oh, nice.
And got into the tens with that, and um, just I ran that car. I drove the car a lot, like summer, even it was like daily until 2003 maybe, and that was when I took the car off the street and quit driving it, and got another DSM for my daily and like kind of winter car, daily car, and I think around 2005, 2007, somewhere in there, I went up and did a shear manifold divided T4 with a GT4202R Garrett turbo setup, and that was like the big jump for the car, where that immediately, first time out of the track, ran nines with it.
Oh man.
Yeah, and had and switched to a standalone ECU, so I had a Series 1 AEM in it at that point in time. And it was pretty cool. It was like second pass. I had super low expectations, just kind of going out there and just trying to do some shakedown runs with it, and just with a super soft launch, ended up running a 9 on my second pass, and it was ever since then it's been, I've really been into drag racing with the car.
That's awesome. That must have been such a amazing feeling.
Oh yeah, I think that was like one of those. I think for a lot of people, getting down to the 9-second pass is like a huge milestone, right? And everybody works so hard, and I don't know, it seems like 11s and 10s and 12s are fine, but 9s is where the car is really starting to get, go fast, especially back then too.
Oh
So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, you were doing a 10-second daily before it was even a thing. So
yeah.
So what was the setup in it? I mean, you're deep into the 8s now. What was the setup in it when you first broke into the 8s?
So the setup in it when I ran 8s, it was a 2.3 liter stroker motor, just a standard 150 millimeter rod, Manley I-beam steel rod, Wiseco piston combo with an OEM crank, still a fully wet block, and running like I think I ran no O-rings in the head or anything. It was a Fel-Pro Permatorque MLS gasket. It was still the GT4202R on it. And I think I ran about 48 to 50 pounds of boost with it. And I ended up running, I think, like an 886 for my first 8-second pass. And that was on E98 with an electric pump. And I think that was 2014, somewhere around 2014 for the year.
Okay.
Yeah, and I changed intercooler setups somewhere through there. I had kind of a cheap, 4-inch thick core, 12-inch by 4-inch by 24, and I ended up going to an ETS 6-inch, and that definitely helped add some efficiency and cool down some intake air temps that I was experiencing with the other intercooler. And it was like right after that change, it ran in the 8s.
And it's been downhill ever since. Huh? I mean, it seems like as soon as you got into the 8s, you just slowly went down and down and down, and now you're at the 8142.
Yep, exactly. And just kind of every winter I would have some project or, something to try to remove weight from the car or, add a little bit more power. So, you know, putting carbon fiber parts on it, building, tubular subframes, doing stuff like that. So every winter I had kind of a dedicated program, and it would, cut a couple tenths off basically
Awesome.
each
So
year.
it's no secret that getting into the sevens is quite the struggle. I know we haven't really seen an update from you so far this year. So, what's it kind of building up to? What's it going to take to get into that seven?
Yeah, and I think the reason nobody's heard from me is in April I had an injury. I was bench pressing, working out, trying to improve myself, right, fitness wise and everything, and I tore my pec
Oh man.
completely, and so I had surgery a couple days later, and I was in a sling for months, so not able to drive. Luckily, it wasn't my shifting hand, so it's my left pec. But I've been going through a lot of vigorous physical therapy, and I'm on the road to recovery now, and I'm cleared to race. So I haven't made any runs down the track this season. And last season, I know there's videos out there of my car, and um, you know, I think I made it to the finals in that event that I ran at 8:14 and turned the power up. Like second, third, and fourth gear, trying to potentially, go quicker than my 8:14. And the car hopped really bad off the line, and I broke a axle stub, or like the factory stub in the rear.
Yeah.
And I kind of vowed, it was, well, one, it breaks a lot of parts when you do stuff like that, all the shock load. But two, it's, driver error. The triple disc quartermaster's just unforgiving. And I wasn't using any type of clutch slipper device or anything like that. So uh, over the winter, this season before I got injured, I did a ton of changes to the car. I had like really old K-Sport struts in the rear that were, back in the day, it was, you wanted a really super heavy spring rate to control the rear. And, I would still energize those springs on the launch, and it would kind of buck because it didn't have any rebound control. So I ended up putting a double adjustable shock in the back from IDS Solutions. It's a Viking shock, and putting an appropriate spring rate in it. And I also added, for data, I added some shock travel sensors so I could see what it would do. So I've made that change over the winter, and I put a lot of time and effort into researching clutch slipping, or like launch control clutch slip devices and things like that. So I put a strategy around Haltech controlling, and I worked with Haltech to figure out what the best way would be for control. And so I'm looking to test that this first outing here, which is in about a week, and do some shakedown passes. And other changes to the car from that 8:14 is, switching to methanol and putting EGTs in every cylinder, and switching to a wideband that'll read methanol levels or methanol ratings, because it's so much richer
Right.
end up burning. So
Certainly
just a
headed
ton
that
of changes.
direction.
Yeah, so certainly a ton of changes that I've got to vet out. And if you know anything about this, drag racing stuff like this, it's easy to take steps backwards
Yeah.
when you're doing this. So I'm kind of going out with a just optimistic, mindset, and not trying to target and say, oh, I'm going to run sevens, or, make my personal best passes. I just want to be able to have a consistent controlled launch, right? And then start turning power up after there. And I know I have more power from, just spending time on the dyno, and methanol is some pretty great stuff too. I think I gained something like, 800 RPM of spool up on the turbo, which is going to be awesome for transient response and everything else.
Definitely, consistency is definitely key when you're talking about those kind of numbers.
Yeah.
So you talked about all the DSMs in the past. You think that if you could start all over, you would do your car exactly how it is now?
I think, well, the end result of where it's at now, I'd say yes, but I think I had to go through the stages for learning, right? And just I skipping right to the end result, I wouldn't be successful doing what I do.
Yeah.
And just understanding fabrication skills, and I've probably rebuilt the car in itself. Like I've cut a cage out, the first cage I put in it, and I had a chance to put the 25.5 in it and do all the things I wanted to do and really have attention to detail. And having those opportunities, I wouldn't have ever been able to do that right from the start. So going through the progression of both driving the car at different power levels and capability levels, as well as just learning along the way about what to do, what not to do. And I think it's been a super long journey, but I wouldn't change anything about it at this point.
Definitely worth the end result there.
Yeah.
So Mark, what keeps you motivated to keep pushing this car? Like you said, all the upgrades over the winter and all that.
Well, I think, it's my personal passion for the Mitsu platform, and then it's also the aftermarket parts folks that are still supporting this, this old platform and continuing to innovate on the platform. Probably one of the biggest things that kept me in this was Magnus coming out with the gear set for the transfer case. I was going through transfer case gears all the time, and it was just super annoying. And part of it's, it isn't a complete solution. The other part of it is my driving errors. And you make one mistake and you break a transfer case, and or they just break because it's not really made to handle any of the loads. So, good part support, as well as continued innovation by a lot of suppliers, and and it's also the push from everybody else. Seeing people go fast, seeing people do different things to go fast, and that's just inspiring. So being a part of that keeps me motivated. And just like you opened with the list, or the top 10 list, and how fast the cars are. The list has been shaking up, like just over this one summer. Looking at it, I was bumped a number of spots, and it just shows that the attention or passion for these vehicles is still out there.
Yep. I know we've talked on the podcast before about some of the 1G guys that have those top 10 numbers selling their cars off, but it's like so many people are coming up the list, even with those cars that used to belong to those guys. So it's definitely, I don't think it's done being shook up yet.
Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, it's going to be really cool to see, upcoming here with, the shootout, with World Cup, with FL2K, to see who makes moves on the list. You've got so many guys. Nick Admiral, and trying to chase down his 7, and me trying to chase down a 7, and so many people, Kyle Hewell, and Matt Wilson, and there's just a bunch of people that are on the cusp of going really fast.
Yeah.
And Jason Fletcher's in that camp too, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we've got there's a big, I don't remember in history a big group of us all kind of bunched together like this. They're all active, all out, trying to improve ourselves, our cars. So I think that's just awesome. That really helps.
We can add Ben Hockman to that list too. He just popped.
Oh yeah.
815.
Heck yeah, like first outing too.
Yep.
It's just crazy to see that. And when I'm name dropping, I just got to say I know there's others, and I'm not leaving anybody out on purpose by any means. It's just off the top of my head kind of memory.
Especially recent. I mean, it feels like it's all happened in the last couple months.
Yeah, right.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Revenge Performance and Transmission. Revenge is the place to get the parts and advice you need to right the wrongs in your vehicle. They partner with industry leaders in parts distribution and warehousing to get you the best possible prices and fastest shipping. With their real-time inventory on their website, if it says in stock, it's ready to ship from them or from their many national distribution partners. They have hundreds of thousands of parts on their website available. So I guarantee they can get revenge on your ride. Find out more about their products and services at revengeperformance.com. So, Mark, we talked about it earlier, but what are your goals for 2022 with this car? Just to get it kind of shook out?
Yeah, I would love to, get the rear suspension set up and the, launch control kind of set up and validated. And, I'm not going to put any, numbers out there or any, targets, but I just want, a clean pass, good outing, a couple, and then I'll be racing at MA Performance, the second proving grounds. So just want to do well there. And that's in, I think, just over a week now away.
So I know most drag racers don't really care about dyno numbers or anything like that, but do you have any long-term either power numbers or quarter-mile goals with this car?
Yeah, I would like to, my goal is to be able to run consistently in the sevens and be competitive.
Yeah.
And, I've never been to the shootout. I've never been to World Cup, and I would love to be able to compete and know that I at least have a shot. I'm never going to be touching the Boostons and Aaron Gregory's and, those folks, and I'm not trying to be the number one spot either, but I want to be in the pack and be competitive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal with the car. I'm not trying to, set world records or anything like that. I think, that takes a whole worldly other effort than what I've been doing, quite frankly.
So we know this isn't your only Mitsubishi. You've talked about some DSMs in the past, and you also have a 9-second Evo on the list.
Yep.
Is there any cars that you want to talk about in particular about your history of Mitsubishi cars?
Yeah, I think so I own two Evo 9s, and they're kind of built for different purposes. And I'd say the one that ran 9s is probably, to date, one of my favorite cars by far. And I've owned that one since new. It's got about 40,000 miles on it on the odometer. And I think I pulled the engine out and built it in, I'm not sure the year, maybe 2008 or 2009, somewhere in there. And the car only had like 12,000 miles on it. So, and just started with, I put a 6266 turbo top mount kit on it right away, and it had a Series 1 EMS, and built transfer case with did the like minimum mandatory kind of things like the torque tube, and upgraded the front diff and things that were known to be problematic and create a lot of failure. So do those things. It was tuned on E85, and I think back then made somewhere around 750 horsepower, and it's slowly progressed from there. I swapped out the six. It's an MR, so I swapped out the 6-speed for a 5-speed right away too. Nice. Knowing how fragile the fourth gears were in the 6-speeds, just proactively, not breaking the 6-speed, but just proactively swapping it out. And that car has been at that power level ever since with the same motor. And my race car was broken, and there was a race event down in Wisconsin, and I joined a bunch of people from Minnesota in the area just going, and I brought my Evo just to try it out and see how it would go, and I entered a small turbo class, and I don't know, there's maybe 15 cars in the class, and I came out of it at with like a runner-up. And it was just crazy to think that it was capable of doing that. And so I had just a ton of fun, and that car is a complete street car, so full radiator, AC. I think when I ran at the track, I still had a spare tire and jack in the trunk and a subwoofer. Man. Just as is, right from the street to the track, and with radial tires, and so it was pretty cool to be able to run a 990 in that car. And then since then I've got a dog box in it, and Hollinger strain gauge handle, and it's tuned on Haltech, just like my race car. And so, yeah, it's just such a blast. And that car, both the cars I've converted to drive-by-wire, so that's been nice. So that car has cruise control and really, really great throttle dynamics.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of my baby for the cars. That'll be the museum car I'll keep forever.
There you
go. Yeah.
So Mark, there's so many people out there building a 1G, and the internet is full of all kinds of different advice of where to go and what to do and what to buy. All your experience over these years, what advice would you give somebody building a 1G right now?
Yeah, that's tough. That's a really hard question. It's a great question too. I think you've got to understand what you want as an end result and kind of figure out your build path to achieve it, right? And I think there's so much information out there on the 1G and all the old forums, talk and tuners and Facebook threads and things like that to educate yourself on. And I think there's still really good support for the platform. And it's been crazy watching the prices of 1Gs kind of skyrocket lately. It's pretty amazing. There's some really good examples. Like I just saw one pop up on Bring a Trailer just a couple of days ago. Nice blue 1G that just looks beautiful. But yeah, it's like the $3,000 to $4,000 car is now your $13,000 to $16,000 car.
Absolutely.
But I think it's worth it. I mean, they're an awesome platform, and I've loved the 1G cars, and I've driven so much of my life in a 1G, driven them across the country on road trips, and they're a fun car overall. So just kind of build what you want, right? And then leverage the resources to be successful if they're out on the internet and other spots, and community, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many people out there that they kind of bought all these parts and then don't know really where to go from there.
Yeah, that is a problem. I've seen too many people get so close to actually having a done car and they part it out before they start it. I think one of the advice points that I would have with people is, and this is a philosophy I took with all the cars I own, is don't have a car down longer than one season. So at least be able to enjoy it, drive it, do something with it, even if it's incremental and it isn't complete. You don't have to wait for the final product and wait over 5 or 8 years. The chances of success that you'll actually finish your build and succeed with what you want to do from a goal is much more likely if you can enjoy your car every year.
Definitely. Mark, if I could throw in one more question. I know I didn't send it to you. I just thought it might be important. Why do you keep pushing the manual trans? When I'm looking at the list, you're the second quickest 1G manual and the only one that is even active racing until you get to the high 8s.
Yep.
So why is it that you keep going with the manual?
Either I'm stubborn or I think I can get it to work. But in all realistic, my friends always say, I just want you to put my auto in your car. Just make a couple passes on my auto,
I think boosting is the measurement to say it will work.
Yes, it will work. And I'm not going to switch to an auto. I think I'll always be stick shift, especially now with advanced ECUs, really figuring out the whole strain gauge shifting and then advanced launch control strategies. I think at the end of the day, you're not losing any power through a converter, and I think the autos are really, really strong. Obviously, look at all the people in the 7s with autos, and in doing so, I really am impressed. I'm really impressed with Jake Montgomery and what he does in his car. It is not a lightweight car, and he can run 7s on, it seems like, command and do it really reliably. And he's a good benchmark for the auto community. and just proving that you can win IFOs back to back to back to back, and he's got something like almost creeping up on 50 wins or something like that. And it's crazy. So if I can, the big thing, like I'd said, get the strategy to work from a consistency and launch perspective, I could, and this is a could, enjoy some of the same success.
That's awesome. I think it's great that people out there, maybe they have a manual 1G and they're thinking about either not building it or swapping to an auto to build it. So it's good that people can see that it can be pushed.
And I'd have to say, just having a dog box car, going from the stock gear set and going to a dog box has been the best upgrade that I've had in the car, because all transmission problems just kind of go away. And I haven't had anything go wrong with the transmission in over a decade, which is crazy.
You kind of find the other driveline.
Yeah, you definitely do. Yeah, the transfer cape has been the heart of the system that's really sucked, but until Magnus came out with the gear set and tail shaft. But yeah, I can't tell you how excited I am just to get out here in a couple weeks and try some stuff out and see how it goes.
Running through some gears.
Yeah, heck yeah. And I spent a lot of time looking back at the data log from that September outing last year. That was my last outing of the year, and I think I ran a couple of 820s and then the 814. And man, it's just, there's so much that I left on the table. It's just crazy. So I'm really looking forward to improve. And when you're saying, another thing you're saying there is that's, I think, the second fastest stick shift on the list. And with John Shepard running a 770 being the fastest, I just 4/10 is a long way away, but that would be a pretty cool milestone.
Oh, definitely. So, Mark, you talked about it briefly. The season's coming to an end, but are there any events that we can see this car in action either this year or even early on into next year?
Yeah, I think I'm still on the fence about, I really would love to make it out to my first shootout this year. But, as everything goes, this next outing here at ME Performance Proving Grounds needs to go well, and the car needs to be running to be able to make that event. And some other logistics things with what I've got going on need to happen correctly too. So the shootout is probably a 50-50 right now, but I really want to go bad and just meet everybody that I've been, chatting on keyboards and telephones face to face that I haven't met before.
Put faces to names now.
100%. And next year I haven't, determined what I'm going to do next year schedule wise, but I've been, like all other probably DSMers, trying to, duplicate everything in my setup so that I can have a successful race season and not be, in parts jail all the time with our difficult supply chain that we have on parts. So, just trying to plan ahead to have basically one of everything in the drivetrain, from engine, trans, transfer case, turbo, everything. So that makes it difficult. Any failure at this point in time, and you can be out for months. It's just crazy.
Well, the good news is at the shootout, somebody has one.
Yeah, fair. That is fair.
I know John Hanlon from Performance Part Out. He usually has a van full of drivetrain parts.
Oh, that's cool.
So we talked about it a little bit, Mark. What do you think? Doing a little hypothetical prediction, what do you think the future of the top 10 of the 1G list looks like?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think we're gonna be leapfrogging each other nonstop, and I think hopefully that gives everybody on the list passion to keep going.
Yeah, definitely, especially the people who are building the serious cars. I hope that lights a fire under them too. Get it out there and get it on the track and keep pushing it.
Yep. And that's been one thing for me, is just the local, in Minnesota here, the local people have been advancing extremely quick. And that in itself has lit a fire under my ass just to get moving, and what triggered a lot of the updates from last year to this year, because I really stagnated a little bit in the power department, really pushing the car hard until a couple of Evos came up, and There's been a 1G car local here. It's now sold, but Wade Delorier had a 1G car going with like 840s, and Kyle Heel running 830s, and so that really got me motivated to get moving and advancing. So the local car community here is really strong, and a lot of people are invested in moving fast and going faster. So that's helped me.
Definitely love to hear that. It definitely takes a community to keep you going.
Yeah, and that community is so important for what we do. You got to share information and data, and strategies, and I think that's the camaraderie that's really cool about it, is getting information from people that have tried things where it hasn't worked or it has, and just helping one another out so you can avoid taking too many steps backwards.
Definitely. Now that I'm kind of in multiple platform kind of communities, it definitely opens my eyes to how great the DSM community is, because nobody gatekeeps anything.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I am somebody that if you reach out and ask me a question, I will respond,
Yeah.
and I won't hide anything. And people do frequently, they'll see posts of where was that O-ring, or just recently on drive-by-wire setup asking me questions about what I did, and it's just really cool.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pay it forward. I used to, like things like I used to break rockers all the time, and they would fly off, and I figured out a method to keep them intact, and sharing that information, right? Things like that where you've had a failure event and it's kind of obscure and it's really hard to diagnose and hard to solve, those types of things.
And that's advanced. The reason that DSMs are so quick is because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, Mark, finally, I always give people a chance to give a shout out to anybody who's really helped them along the way. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, this is hard because, again, I don't have a list of names, so I don't want to leave anybody out, right? And that's the danger of doing this. But first and foremost, the easy one and the most gratitude and thanks goes out to my wife. She's been along for the ride this whole way through, and she's never said no, or on the other flip side of that, she's always, been very supportive of anything I'm doing. All the time I spend in my garage, fabricating and tuning and out racing, and just her support, and also just financially, these cars are not cheap, and the budget I spend is pretty extreme. Some years it can be $5,000-$10,000 in the off season, getting stuff ready and buying parts and making big changes, and that's that type of support. It goes a long ways, and my gratitude and appreciation for that is huge. So first and foremost, my wife. And then I'd say, I've got a number of friends in the community. I'm not going to name everybody, but, just that community help and camaraderie and data sharing and, coaching and just helping each other out. That goes a long ways. And then I'd say, things like my sponsors. I'm sponsored by MA Performance, and they've been a longtime sponsor of mine for like 10 years. And it's been an awesome ride with those guys, and they give me so many connections to other parts, as well as their knowledge and access to their dyno and facilities, and basically just again helping out with information and data, etc. And just the parts community in general for continuing to innovate and continuing to support this ancient platform, and to be able to keep it alive. So that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Mark, it has been an absolute pleasure. I love talking to you, and I can't wait to see an update after all your changes. So hopefully we can see one soon.
Yeah, likewise. And thanks so much for bringing me on. I'm humbled. When you reached out, I was like, oh, that's so cool. I can't, I was more than happy to have this discussion with you today, and super humbled that I'm on here. So
absolutely, it was great having you on. I hope that we inspired some people to get out there in their manual 1Gs and hit the track and start putting some big turbos and some big turbo parts on there.
Heck yeah.
All right, Mark, have a good one.
Likewise, you too. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.